golfers, I'm Lou from Golf Avenue, and today we're trying out Cobra drivers. From the Amp all the way to the Aerojet, we want to see how used drivers stack up against new ones. Make sure to stick around till the end for some very surprising results. Our objective with this test is to answer a few questions that many of you may have at home. With today's test, we're looking to see which driver provides the best performance on the course, which one is the most forgiving, and which one is best suited for golfers of different skill levels, such as beginner, intermediate, and expert. Just before we get to the testing phase, let's look at what we'll be using to test out those clubs. First off, the golf ball, Srixon Z-Star XV. We'll keep a close eye on the condition of the ball just to make sure we avoid scuffs, which could skew the data in the end. And just like last time, we're still powered by TrackMan at Golf Avenue, so we'll make sure to use the data as provided by the TrackMan simulator once we're done. So here's how we'll be testing each of our drivers today. I'll be hitting all the shots on our indoor simulator. We'll keep the best strikes from each club and we'll use it as our basis of comparison when we do our analysis later. Once we've collected all the data, we'll break the clubs down one by one and we'll end the video by answering the questions we posed at the start of it. This test will also serve to see how much of an impact yours and the price tag can have on performance. Now that we have everything covered, there's only one thing left to do. It's time to test out those clubs. Let's get to it. The first driver we tested was the Cobra LTDx Max. Upon release, it was meant to be an update on the LTD model released in 2016. The main draw for both the LTDx and the original were their hot club face and high ball speed. So obviously ball speed was one of the main things I was interested to test with this one, and forgiveness was not too far behind as well. So let's dive into the results and see how this club performed. As you can see, I hit quite a few shots with the LTDx Max and the dispersion area is pretty wide. That was on purpose since I was trying to shape the ball in different directions and have a feel for the club face. The impact was generally focused on the right side of the sweet spot, slightly above the median line of the club face. And the impact zone also explained the ball trajectory as I produced a lot of draws and high fades. These trajectories are pretty useful for golfers who are trying to shape their shots, but if you're just a golfer who's looking to hit the ball straighter, this might not be exactly what you're looking for. In terms of performance, the LTDx Max is one of the longest drivers I hit today. I averaged out 254 yards with it, and I was able to shape the ball both ways off the tee when I was trying to hit both draws and fades. I would have liked to test forgiveness a little more on miss hits, but as we could see from the chart, my impact zone was a little too consistent to actually see any results out of this. Finally, the LTDx Max massive club head might be a turnoff to some golfers, but many will see this as a reassuring sight when they're standing over the golf ball about to hit their ball down the fairway. So make sure you keep that in mind when you're looking for the LTDx Max. Our second club is the Cobra King Radspeed, released in 2021, and much like its predecessor and its successor, speed was all the talk with this one, so I was really looking forward to trying out this one. Simply put, this driver was designed to allow powerful hitters to maximize their output in the course. But what I want to know, and what you probably want to know at home, is how does this club perform in the hands of the average golfer? Well, I tested it for you, and let's look at the results and see what we got. I produced my longest average drives with the Radspeed at 263 yards with an average ball speed of 146 miles per hour. And I also hit my longest ball of all the testing phase at 291 yards with a ball speed of 157 miles per hour. Here again, you can see that I worked the ball both ways with the Radspeed, but to be fair, my impact zone was not as consistent, so it could have been the results of off-center strikes or poorly struck balls. It's also worth taking a look at the spin rate on this one. It's 400 RPMs higher than the LTDx Max, which might have contributed to the longer strikes and maybe a longer rollout. The spin rate was noteworthy with the Radspeed as it was 400 RPMs higher than the LTDx Max, which could also explain the longer strikes, as my ball was definitely flying higher. Overall, the Radspeed holds true to its name. I felt like the ball was springing up the club face every single time it was making contact, and the data shows that this feeling was accurate. In terms of forgiveness, the Radspeed won't be too punishing on off-center strikes, but don't expect any help from it either. If you're missing the sweet spot, you might see some trouble on the course. Finally, the Radspeed was not only the best performing club out of all this test, it was also the club that felt most natural in my hands. So for any golfers that refer to them as mid-handicappers or intermediate golfers, I would strongly suggest adding this one to the bag. Next up, we're jumping back 2 years in time for the 2019 released Cobra F9 Speedback driver, and we had a special camo edition on hand, so we decided to use it for this test. The King F9 could be found as recently as 2021 in Ricky Fowler's bag, which is a testament to the quality of this club, so I was really excited to see what Ricky liked so much about it. Right away, one of the things that stuck out to me was how light the King F9 felt on the end of the shaft while I was standing at address. Those lower impacts on the club face produced higher spin rate than the Radspeed, yet I was not able to get the same length with the F9 as I was able to get with the Radspeed. Dispersion is really wide here. If you look, it's a bit wider than any of the other clubs I tested. The reason why that is because I really had a hard time feeling the club face at the end of the shaft. It really felt like it was a bit too light for me. So one of the things that I did like about the King F9 Speedback is that you can tell that this driver was optimized to maximize ball speed in terms of aerodynamics. It's super lightweight and the aerodynamic build make for a perfect club for golfers with slower swing speed who are looking for something lighter off the tee. Forgiveness is not one of the main perks with this one, but it will produce high launch angles and high spin rates, which are very useful for golfers with a slower swing speed again. Next up, we're jumping back 2 years in time to see the King F7. One of the things that stuck out to me right away with this one was the massive club head. I was kind of worried at first that it was going to be hard to find my comfort with it, but turns out that it was much better than I anticipated. So let's jump right into the results and see what we had to work with. The King F7 had a lot of surprises in store for us. First off, it had a longer carry and total distance than the F9 driver average over the testing phase. It's really impressive, especially when you consider the fact that it was released 2 years before the F9. Club head and ball speed are both lower than the F9, yet the strikes are much longer. It's when you look at the spin rate and the launch angle where we get our answers for those longer strikes. The spin rate is slightly lower, which allows for a better roll once the ball makes contact with the ground. It also affects the height of the ball flight, which was slightly lower than the F9s. In other words, or to put it simply, the ball trajectories I was producing with the F7 were simply better than I was doing with the F9. That is not to say that the F7 is outright better than the F9, but in my case, it was certainly more suited to my game. So overall, I was very impressed by the King F7. I knew it could hold its own in this test, but I didn't think it was going to be outperforming some more recent clubs like this. In the end, the massive club head didn't bother me at all. Actually, it served as a wider target for the ball as I was going through impact, which is really helpful for golfers who struggle with making contact with the same exact spot on the club face many times over and over. Finally, the most impressive fact about this club for me was the ability that I had to work the ball both ways, even though this club is designed to be a really forgiving driver that is not really made to work the ball around the course, but I was still able to produce some very interesting ball flights with it. Now for the oldest driver in our test, we looked at the 2012 Cobra Amp driver. Just like I did during our TaylorMade test, I was most interested to try out this driver and see how it stacks up against the new one. By the way, if you haven't checked out our TaylorMade video yet, make sure to check out the link in the description, and we'll also try to include the link on the video right here. Back to the Amp, the old school colorway and look really caught my eye, but what I was really most interested to do was bring it out and test it on the simulator. Alright, so aside from its look, there's a few things that stand out with the Cobra Amp. First off, total distance is very impressive on average, especially considering that it only trails the more recent clubs by about 5 yards or so. This is a testament to how well used golf clubs can hold up, even after years of use on the golf course. We also need to keep in mind that I was using a regular shaft with this one, so I was not able to put all my speed behind that ball, all my force, all the power of my swing behind every swing. So club speed might be a little lower, ball speed might be a little lower as well. That is simply because I was trying to hit the ball squarely instead of just trying to smash it away. When we look at my impact zone, it was much more focused near the sweet spot with the Amp, just a bit to the right maybe. That did produce draws though, as you can see from the trajectories if you look right next to it. A lot of draws were hit with the Amp. I think we can partly attribute this to the fact that I was hitting a regular shaft, but if you look at the face-to-path angle, you'll quickly see why we hit mostly draws with this one. So the Amp driver packs everything that we love from old school drive. It produces a loud ping noise upon impact, had those bright Cobra colors that we love, has a massive club head, and has barely any adjustability. And since the club head is so voluminous, it makes for a perfect target for golfers who are less experienced or who struggle to hit the ball with consistency. Finally, despite my best tries, I was not able to hit a slice with this one, so it might be a good indicator that it might help kill slices for golfers who are struggling with those on the golf course. Last but not least, we got this year's release, the Cobra Aerojet. I didn't expect a lot of forgiveness out of the Aerojet because that's not what it's marketed for, but I did expect high ball speed and high distances. So let's see if it delivered. A few things right off the top with the Aerojet. I did struggle to find the sweet spot on this club face. As you can see from the chart, I hit a few above the sweet spot and maybe a couple on the inside of the club face. The penalty on those off-center strike was pretty significant as I would lose out on both distance and accuracy. Interestingly, I averaged my highest ball speed with the Aerojet, but I did not hit my longest strike of the day with it. What really caught my eye were the low spin rates and launch angle. Both metrics were significantly lower than with other clubs I tested. So for the Aerojet, it might not have been the right club for me, but there are some redeeming qualities about this club for sure. Players with high swing speed will love the low spin rate on the Aerojet as it will help them control the ball off the tee. I was able to work the ball both ways with this club, so I would imagine that highly skilled players won't have any issue doing the same. Finally, the club face feels very, very hot, so any ball that does find the sweet spot will be launched off the club face and go for miles. At the start of this video, we had three main questions we were looking to answer. Which driver provided the best performance? Which one was the most forgiving? And which driver was best suited for the different skill levels out there. Let's first see which driver was the best performing. When it comes to performance, distance and speed are usually king, and in the case of this test, there was one and only true king, the Radspeed. I not only hit my longest strike with the Radspeed at 291 yards, but I also managed to record my highest club head speed and ball speed with this one. I didn't purposely hit my longest strike with the Radspeed because I put more power behind the ball, but it did feel like the most natural club to me in my hands, which allowed me to produce the best strike possible. The Aerojet comes second in that department. I was able to produce my second longest average at 258 yards with this one and my second longest drive at 287 yards. I couldn't really find my groove with the Aerojet, but it still performed really well, which means that in the right hands, it could really be an asset on the course. Rounding out the podium, we have a surprise with the King F7. I averaged 256 yards and I managed to push one just beyond 278 yards. Those are very impressive numbers considering that this driver came out more than 5 years ago. Now that we know which one of these drivers provides the most powerful strikes, it's time to see which one is the most forgiving. Impressively taking the crown in that department during our testing phase was the Amp driver. My consistency was at its best with the Amp and my dispersion rate was at its lowest. It needs to be said I was able to find the middle of the club face with consistency with this one, so off-standard strike would have probably skewed the test a bit. The second most forgiving driver is the King S7. This one shines in both departments as it showcased its power already, and now is showcasing its forgiving attributes. The dispersion was the second lowest of all the clubs I tested, and the consistency was also the second best of all. Third, we have another forgiving driver with the Aerojet. Its dispersion was not amongst the best, but its forgiving attributes can't be ignored. I struggled to find the sweet spot on this one, yet I was still able to produce impressive and powerful strikes. It ranks as the third most forgiving clubs out of all the ones I tested out today simply for its forgiving attributes on the off-center strikes. Finally, let's take a look at the drivers I would recommend for golfers of different skill level. We're going to kick things off with beginners. First off, for beginners, the crown goes to the King F7 for its blend of forgiveness and power. Additionally, you can easily find a used version of the King F7 driver, which will allow you to save on the driver and invest in something else. The second pick for beginners, we have the LTDx Max. While it did not perform the best for me during this testing phase, it is designed to help out beginner golfers. The weight adjustment in the club head will help beginner golfers launch the ball higher in the air, which always helps off the tee. It does come at a steeper price tag than the King F7, but you need to keep in mind that this one came out last year and is definitely more available than the King F7 is, even if it's a used model. I love to give recommendation for intermediate golfers because it allows me to recommend the clubs that I would simply pick for myself. I consider myself an intermediate golfer, and I think these recommendations will suit you just as well. My first pick, the King Radspeed. I mentioned it a bunch of times throughout this review, but the Radspeed felt best to me both at address and when I was swinging my club. And I do believe that it will allow you to maximize your output while you're out in the course, while still providing you with just a touch of forgiveness that we're still all seeking on the course. Next up, I'll recommend the Amp driver. While it wasn't the best performing clubs of all the ones I tested out today, we need to keep in mind that I was using a regular shaft with this one, which limited my output, and that it still performed relatively close to the performance we got out of drivers that came out last year, and we got to keep in mind that this one came out over 10 years ago. Finishing things off, we'll look at the clubs that will allow experienced and advanced players to maximize their performance on the course. For advanced and highly skilled golfers, we've got two more recommendations. First up, we've got the Aerojet, and I believe this club can be added to any skilled golfer's bag. Since these players tend to find a sweet spot with more consistency, I believe they'll be able to maximize the output of this club on the golf course. Closing out our list, we've got the King F9 Speedback. It's no wonder he hung around Ricky Fowler's bag for so long. This club is ideal for golfers with fast swing speed and who are looking to minimize spin rate at impact. The F9 would not only allow golfers to hit the ball further, but it will allow them to control the ball and shape their shot off the tee box. Alright guys, that just about wraps things up for our Cobra driver comparison test. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we really do put a lot of time behind those videos, so if you're so inclined, if you want to leave a like, maybe subscribe to the channel, we'd really appreciate it, and it will help us grow and allow us to produce even more videos for you in the future. Talking about more videos, we're going to be doing another one of those drivers comparison tests. Can you guess which brands? Go down in the comments and let us know which brands you think we'll be testing next, and this one will know you made it all the way through this video. And as always, for all your golf needs, there's only one place to go, and it's Golf Avenue. And if you need any recommendation or you need expert advice, you can always seek out an appointment with one of our experts and book an online call with one of them. For Golf Avenue, I've been Lou. Until next time.